God has been our fortress. He has been our strength in times of change. He saves the same, exalt his holy name. Be still and know that he is God. He reigns forevermore. Through yes and no, his glory shows. He is God alone. He is God alone. We will not be shaken. We won't be afraid. Our God has been all that we need. He is our victory. Be still and know that he is God. He reigns forevermore. Through yes and no, his glory shows. He is God alone. He is God alone. We exalt thee, we exalt thee. Holy is your name. We exalt thee, we exalt thee. You remain the same. We exalt thee, we exalt thee. Holy is your name. We exalt thee, we exalt thee. You remain the same. Be still and know that he is God. He reigns forevermore. Through yes and no, his glory shows. He is God alone. He is God alone.
Revelation 18, verse 1. After this I saw another angel coming down from heaven, having great authority, and the earth was made bright with his glory. And he called out with a mighty voice, Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. She has become a dwelling place for demons, a haunt for every unclean spirit, a haunt for every unclean bird, a haunt for every unclean and detestable beast. For all nations have drunk the wine of the passion of her sexual immorality, and the kings of the earth have committed immorality with her, and the merchants of the earth have grown rich from the power of her luxurious living. Then I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, lest you take part in her sins, lest you share in her plagues. For her sins are heaped high as heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities. Pay her back as she herself has paid back others, and repay her double for her deeds. Mix a double portion for her in the cup she mixed. As she glorified herself and lived in luxury, so give her a like measure of torment and mourning. since in her heart she says, I sit as a queen, I am no widow, and mourning I shall never see. For this reason her plagues will come in a single day, death and mourning and famine, and she will be burned up with fire, for mighty is the Lord God who has judged her. And the kings of the earth, who committed sexual immorality and lived in her luxury with her, will weep and wail over her when they see the smoke of her burning. They will stand far off in fear of her torment and say, Alas, alas, you great city, you mighty city Babylon, for in a single hour your judgment has come. And the merchants of the earth weep and mourn for her, since no one buys their cargo any more, cargo of gold, silver, jewels, pearls, fine linen, purple cloth, silk, scarlet cloth, all kinds of scented wood, all kinds of articles of ivory, all kinds of articles of costly wood, bronze, iron, and marble, cinnamon, spice, incense, myrrh, frankincense, wine, oil, fine flour, wheat, cattle and sheep, horses and chariots, and slaves, that is, human souls. The fruit for which your soul longed has gone from you, and all your delicacies and your splendors are lost to you, never to be found again. The merchants of these wares, who gained wealth from her, will stand far off, in fear of her torment, weeping and mourning aloud. Alas, alas, for the great city, that was clothed in fine linen, in purple and scarlet, adorned with gold, with jewels, and with pearls. For in a single hour all this wealth has been laid waste, and all shipmasters and seafaring men, sailors, and all whose trade is on the sea, stood far off, and cried out as they saw the smoke of her burning. What city was like the great city? And they threw dust on their heads as they wept and mourned, crying out, Alas, alas, for the great city, where all who had ships at sea grew rich by her wealth. For in a single hour she has been laid waste. Rejoice over her, O heaven, and you saints and apostles and prophets, for God has given judgment for you against her. Then a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and threw it into the sea, saying, So will Babylon the great city be thrown down with violence, and will be found no more. And the sound of harpists and musicians, of flute players and trumpeters, will be heard in you no more. And a craftsman of any craft will be found in you no more. And the sound of the mill will be heard in you no more. And the light of a lamp will shine in you no more. And the voice of bridegroom and bride will be heard in you no more. For your merchants were the great ones of the earth, and all nations were deceived by your sorcery. And in her was found the blood of prophets and of saints, and of all who have been slain on earth. Welcome back to our study through the book of Revelation. In our last study, we spent time in Revelation chapter 17, where John was showing the great harlot, Babylon the Great, seated on the beast. We saw the picture of a city, a power, an empire dressed in wealth and glory, yet full of corruption, immorality, arrogance, and persecution against the people of God. Now when we come to Revelation chapter 18, the picture does not change subjects as much as it expands the picture. Chapter 18 takes what chapter 17 introduced and presses it further. It is as though the Spirit is saying, look again, look closer. See not only that Babylon will fall, but why she will fall. See not only the judgment itself, but the fallout of that judgment. See what happens when a world builds itself on wickedness, luxury, deception, idolatry, and bloodshed, and then God says, enough. Revelation 18 is a chapter about the fall of Babylon the Great. Now, we've talked at great length about the fact that Babylon should be understood in relation as Rome, especially Rome and its commercial, pagan, immoral, persecuting power. This is the great city, the great empire, the great worldly system that appeared unbeatable in the first century. Rome looked permanent. Rome looked wealthy. Rome looked secure. Rome looked like the center of the world. Revelation 18 opens with heaven's announcement, fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. Now, that's important. When John receives this vision, Rome has not fallen yet. Rome is still powerful. Rome is still wealthy. Rome is still feared. Rome is still expanding in influence. If you were living in that first century world, Rome did not look like a collapsing empire. Rome looked like the empire that would never end. And yet heaven speaks of her fall with certainty. That is something we need to understand about prophetic language. God can speak of future judgment as though it has already happened, because when God declares a thing, it's settled. Babylon's fall may still be future from John's vantage point, but from heaven's vantage point, it is certain. The angel does not say Babylon might fall. He does not say Babylon could fall if things go badly enough. No, he cries out with a mighty voice, fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. That is certainty, a divine judgment. And the opening verse tells us why judgment is coming. Babylon has become a dwelling place for demons, a haunt for every unclean spirit, a haunt for every unclean bird, and a haunt for every unclean and detestable beast. The picture is not of moral health. It is not of spiritual beauty. It is not of righteousness. It is a picture of corruption. Everything unclean, everything detestable, everything opposed to God has found a home there. In other words, Rome may have looked glorious on the outside, but heaven saw what she really was. And that is one of the great lessons of Revelation. The world is often impressed with what God condemns. The world sees wealth, power, influence, military strength, political dominance, and commercial success, and says, look how great this is. But heaven looks beneath the purple and scarlet. Heaven looks beneath the gold, jewels, and pearls. Heaven looks beneath the marketplace, the empire, the throne, and the public image. Heaven sees the idolatry. Heaven sees the immorality. Heaven sees the arrogance. Heaven sees the blood of the saints. And so Revelation 18 begins by forcing us to see Babylon from heaven's perspective. Verse 3 also makes clear that Babylon's wickedness was not isolated. This was not merely a problem with one ruler or one city official. The nation had drunk the wine of her immorality. The kings of the earth had committed immorality with her. The merchants of the earth had grown rich from the power of her luxurious living. That means the whole system has been infected. The kings were involved. The nations were involved. The merchants were involved. Political power, economic power, and spiritual corruption were all just woven together. The world was not standing at a distance saying, Rome is wicked, but we are innocent here. No, the world was participating in it. The world was profiting from it. The world was enjoying the luxury that came from it. And because the world shared in her sins, the world would also feel the effects of her judgment. That is why this chapter is so sobering. Revelation 18 is not merely saying a bad city will fall. It is saying a whole world order built on rebellion against God will be shaken. When Babylon falls, kings mourn. Merchants mourn, shipmasters mourn, traders mourn. Everyone who had attached their hope, their wealth, their future, and their security to Babylon suddenly realizes that what looked permanent was only temporary. But before Revelation 18 describes the mourning of the kings and merchants, heaven gives a command to the people of God. He says, "Come out of her, my people." That's the call of this chapter. And we need to be clear about what that means. This is not merely a command to pack your bags and move outside the Roman Empire. I mean, just think about it. For many Christians, there would have been nowhere to go. Rome's influence stretched across the known world. The call is moral and spiritual. It's a call to separate.
It's a call not to participate in her sins. It's a call not to worship the beast, not to bow to the image, not to give allegiance to the emperor as though Caesar was divine, and not to join the world in its idolatry and immorality. The warning is direct. Come out of her, my people, lest you take part in her sins, lest you share in her plagues. That's a serious warning. God's people cannot act like Babylon and expect to be spared from Babylon's judgment. If they participate in her sins, they will share in her plagues. To say it plainly, act like the world, and you'll be judged like the world. So Revelation 18 begins with two great truths. First, Babylon will fall. No worldly power, no matter how wealthy, arrogant, or secure, can stand when God judges it. Secondly, God's people must come out from Babylon. They must not be seduced by her luxury, intimidated by her power, deceived by her religion, or absorbed into her culture. The message is not only look what God will do to Rome, the message is also make sure you are not standing with Rome when judgment comes. And that's where Revelation 18 begins. Babylon looks powerful, but heaven says she will fall. Babylon looks powerful, but heaven says she has fallen. Babylon looks glorious, but heaven says she is unclean. Babylon looks profitable, but heaven says her sins are remembered. Babylon invites the world to join her, but heaven calls God's people to come out. And that is the question this chapter places before us. When the world around us is impressed with Babylon, will we see her the way heaven sees her? Now again, let me back up to verses 1 and 2. The first voice in Revelation 18 announces the fall of Babylon. But then John hears another voice from heaven. And this voice is not addressed to Babylon first. It's addressed to the people of God. That passage about coming out of her, my people. That may be the most urgent command in the chapter. Don't participate in Babylon's sins. Don't share in Babylon's plagues. And that's important because Revelation 18 is not written merely so Christians can look at Rome and say, look how wicked they are. This chapter is written so Christians will look at Rome and say, I must not become part of that. It is not just a message about what God will do to Babylon. It's a message about what God's people must do while they are still living in a Babylon-like world. Again, the command is not merely geographical. It's not simply move away from Rome. I mean, this is practically impossible for these Christians at this time. Rome's reach was vast. Its power stretched across the known world, as we said a moment ago. Its influence was political, economical, military, cultural, and religious. Where would you go to fully escape the presence of Rome? So as we said a moment ago, the command is moral and spiritual. Come out from her sins. Come out from her idolatry. Come out from her immorality. Come out from her emperor worship. Come out from her arrogance. Come out from the pressure to bow before the beast. Come out from the whole system that tells you survival, comfort, and financial security are worth more than faithfulness to God. This connects back to what we've already seen in Revelation chapter 13. The beast demands worship. The image of the beast must be honored. People are pressured to receive the mark of the beast so they can buy and sell. The temptation for Christians would have been unbelievably intense. If you did not participate, you could very likely lose your business. You may lose your status. You may lose your security. And most importantly, you may lose your life and the life of your family. And yet heaven says, come out of her. Don't worship the beast. Don't bow to the image. Don't treat Caesar as divine. Don't join in the idolatry simply because everyone else is doing it. Don't let economic pressure determine your allegiances. Don't let the fear of suffering push you into compromise. Then comes the warning. Lest you take part in her sins, lest you share in her plagues. This is one of the great sobering truths in this chapter. God's people cannot participate in Babylon's sins and then assume they will be exempt from Babylon's judgment. If they share in her rebellion, they will share in her plagues. If they live like Babylon, they'll be judged like Babylon. That's a warning every generation needs. It's easy to condemn the world in broad terms while quietly adopting its values. It's easy to say we oppose Babylon while craving Babylon's luxury. It is easy to criticize worldly power while giving our hearts to worldly security. It's easy to say we worship God by letting politics, money, country, comfort, and culture become the thing that really controls our fear, hope, and identity. But Revelation 18 will not let us do that. The call is clear. Come out of her, my people. Why? Verse 5 says, for her sins are heaped up as high as heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities. Now, that language is vivid here. Babylon's sins are not small. They're not hidden. They're not forgotten. They are piled up as high as heaven. The image is almost overwhelming. Sin upon sin upon sin, injustice upon injustice, idolatry upon idolatry, persecution upon persecution, until the guilt of Babylon stands like a mountain before God. And God remembers. That does not mean God had forgotten and suddenly recalled it. Oh, Babylon. It means God has kept the account. He has not overlooked the blood of his people. He has not ignored the arrogance of the empire. He has not excused the immorality of the nations. He has not been asleep while Babylon lived in luxury. And again, that's one of the major messages of Revelation. The people of God may ask, how long? They may wonder why God allows wicked powers to rise. They may wonder why the beast seems to prosper. They may wonder why the saints suffer while Babylon grows rich. But heaven's answer is God remembers. God sees. God knows. God will judge. Verse 6 then calls for Babylon to be repaid. Pay her back as she herself has paid back others, and repay her double for her deeds. This is the justice of God. Babylon will receive according to what she has done. The cup she mixed for others will be mixed for her. The suffering she brought on others will return upon her. The judgment is not random. It is not excessive. It is measured according to her works. But the language grows stronger still. Mix a double portion for her in the cup she mixed. Early in a relation, the wrath of God is pictured as wine being poured out unmixed, undiluted. Here's the picture of intensifying. Not only is the cup not watered down, it is doubled. The point is not that God is unjust or uncontrolled. No, the point is that Babylon's guilt is so great and her arrogance so high, her corruption so deep, that the full force of divine judgment is coming against her. And then verse 7 identifies another reason for her fall. She glorified herself and lived in luxury. That's a dangerous combination, self-glory and luxury. Babylon did not receive her prosperity with humility. She did not give glory to God. She did not say every good gift comes from the Lord from above. No, she did not see her wealth as something entrusted by God. Instead, she glorified herself. She looked at her power, her trade, her riches, her splendor, and said, "Look at what I have built. Look at how great I am." That's the language of Nebuchadnezzar. Remember Nebuchadnezzar in the book of Daniel? That is the spirit of human empire. That is the arrogance of worldly power. It looks at blessings that God has allowed and turns them into reasons for pride. And in her heart, Babylon says, "I sit as a queen. I am no widow, and mourning I shall never see." That's the voice of arrogance. I cannot fall. I will not grieve. I will never be brought low. No one can conquer me. No one can touch me. No one can take this away. But just as Nebuchadnezzar was wrong, and God turned him into a beast for reminder, Babylon is wrong. Verse 8 says, "For this reason her plagues will come in on a single day." And it does not require us to imagine that every detail of Rome's collapse happened in one literal 24-hour period. The image is of that of suddenness. It's the shock of judgment, shock and awe. It's the world power that seemed permanent suddenly losing its power. It's the empire that looked invincible suddenly being exposed as fragile. It is God saying, you thought this world would last forever. You thought this empire would last forever. But I can take it away in a moment. Death, mourning, famine, and fire come upon her because mighty is the Lord God who has judged her. Babylon is mighty in the eyes of the world, but the Lord God is mighty over Babylon. Rome may rule nations, but God rules Rome. Babylon may intimidate saints, but God judges Babylon. The empire may seem secure, but its security lasts only as long as God permits it. And that brings the warning home to us. Any nation, any culture, any economy, any people who pile up sins, glorifying themselves, live in luxury without honoring God, and says, we will never fall. Those are standing in dangerous territory. I love this country that we live in. I love the United States of America. We have so many great blessings from God because we are in this country. God has indeed blessed this country. But that doesn't mean that God will let this country last forever. No nation on this earth has lasted forever. God may decide in a moment to wrap this whole thing up and decide that he's done with the United States of America. You know what that means for us as New Testament Christians? We're still New Testament Christians. We're still going to serve God no matter what country, no matter what state or status we find ourselves in. Revelation 18 is not inviting us to have some arrogance over Rome and what happened to them. It's calling us to humility before God because the same thing can happen in any country that we live in today. The question is not merely, did Babylon fall? The question is, have we come out of her? Have we come out of her sins? Have we come out of her arrogance? Have we come out of her idolatry? Have we come out of her confidence in wealth and power? Have we come out from the belief that comfort is worth compromise? Because heaven still says to the people of God, come out of her, my people. After the command to God's people to come out, Revelation 18 turns our attention to the reaction of the world. And what does the world do when Babylon falls? Well, verse 9 tells us that the world weeps. Now that's striking. Heaven has already declared Babylon guilty. Heaven has already said her sins are heaped up as high as a mountain to heaven. Heaven has already said God has remembered her iniquities. Heaven has already called his people to come out of her and not share in her sins. But when Babylon falls, the world does not say, whoa, we better repent or the same will happen to us. No, the world does not say, we know God was right to do that. The world does not say we should never join in ourselves in their wicked sins. The world does not mourn over its own sins. The world mourns over lost luxury. And that's the key to understanding verses 9 through 19. 3 groups appear in this section: the kings of the earth, the merchants of the earth, and the shipmasters or sea traders. Each group stands at a distance. Each group sees the smoke of Babylon's burning. Each group cries out, alas, alas. And each group grieves because the system that made them rich has collapsed. Now let's talk about those kings first. These are the rulers who committed immorality with Babylon and lived in luxury with her. They are not innocent observers here. They have participated in her corruption. They have joined themselves to her power. They had benefited from her influence. They had shared in the same immoral system. But when judgment comes, where are they? They're standing afar off. And that detail matters. Oh, they loved Babylon when she made them powerful. They loved Babylon when she helped them live in luxury. They loved Babylon when she gave them status and influence. But when judgment falls, they do not run toward her. They stand afar off in fear of her torment. That is the loyalty of the world. Worldly alliances often last only as long as they are profitable. The kings who benefited from Babylon do not save Babylon. They don't rescue her. They don't stand beside her in judgment and say, you know what, we ought to come to their aid. No, they watch from a distance and cry, alas, alas, you great city, you mighty city Babylon, for in a single hour your judgment has come. Remember in chapter 17 we saw the beast and the kings turning against the woman? Now in chapter 18 we see the irony of that collapse. When Babylon falls, the same world that was entangled with her realizes what has been lost. The destruction of Rome's power does not leave the nations untouched. They were tied to her. They profited from her. They participated in her sins. So when she falls, they feel the loss. All right, now how about those merchants? Verse 11 says they weep and mourn because no one buys their cargo anymore. And again, notice what they are grieving. They're not grieving the blood of the saints. They're not grieving the deception of the nation. They're not grieving idolatry. They're not grieving immorality. They're grieving the loss of the market. Their sorrow is commercial sorrow. And then Revelation gives us that long list of cargo: gold, silver, jewels, pearls, fine linen, purple cloth, silk, scarlet cloth, scented wood, ivory, costly wood, bronze, iron, marble, cinnamon, spice, incense, myrrh, frankincense, wine, oil, fine flour, wheat, cattle, sheep, horses, chariots, and slaves. That is, human souls, he says. That list is not random. It is showing the vastness of Babylon's wealth. It is showing a world of luxury, trade, appetite, and consumption. Rome could draw goods from everywhere. What we've noted thus far in our study of Revelation is that Rome traded everywhere. Their trade routes reach across great distances, even toward India and China, with goods, spices, and fine linens and luxuries moving throughout the empire. Rome was not merely a political power, it was an economic power. Its appetite created wealth for merchants across the earth. But Revelation wants us to see more than economics. It wants us to see what kind of world this was. The list begins with luxury items: gold, silver, and jewels, pearls, fine cloth. But it ends with slaves. And notice there at the end there, that is human souls, which is a chilling phrase there. In Babylon's economy, even people become cargo. Human beings are reduced to merchandise. Souls are traded as commodities. The empire's appetite is so corrupt that it does not merely trade in goods, it trades in people. And that is perhaps one of the darkest marks of Babylon. When a culture becomes consumed with wealth, power, luxury, and self-glory, people made in the image of God become tools for profit. Human souls become part of the cargo list. And God sees that. The merchants may have counted money, but God counted souls. The merchants may have seen cargo, but God saw people. The merchants may have mourned the loss of business, but God remembers the blood, the exploitation, the deception, and the injustice. Verse 14 says, "The fruit of which your soul longed has gone from you, and all your delicacies and your splendors are lost to you, never to be found again." That is the collapse of Babylon's dream. Everything she longed for is gone. Everything she decorated herself with is gone. Everything she trusted in is gone. Her delicacies are gone. Her splendors are gone. Her market is gone. Her wealth is gone. Her glory is gone. And the merchants who gained wealth from her stand far off, weeping and mourning aloud. They cry, "Alas, alas, for the great city that was clothed in fine linen, in purple and scarlet, adorned with gold, with jewels, and with pearls. For in a single hour all this wealth has been laid waste." There it is again, that phrase, "in a single hour." Again, the point is suddenness. The world thought Babylon's wealth was secure. The merchants built their futures on her appetite. The nations built their prosperity around her trade. The kings built their luxury around her power. But God can bring down in a single hour what men thought would last forever. Then we see that the shipmasters mourn. All the seafaring men, sailors, and those whose trade is on the sea stand far off. They see the smoke of her burning and cry out, "What city was like the great city?" They throw dust on their heads. They weep and mourn. They cry, "Alas, alas, for the great city, where all who had ships at sea grew rich by her wealth. For in a single hour she had been laid waste." So the picture widens again. It's not only kings, it's not only merchants, it's the whole network of commerce. Everyone whose life and wealth was tied to Babylon feels the devastation. The fall of Rome is not pictured as a small local event. It is pictured as an economic earthquake. The great commercial power collapses, and the shock waves move throughout the world. We should notice the spiritual tragedy here. Everyone is crying, but no one is repenting. They are sad because their wealth is gone, not because their sins were great. They mourn the loss of luxury, not the offense against God. They weep over the fall of the market, but not the ruin of their souls. And that is the blindness of Babylon. When wealth becomes our God, judgment looks like financial loss. When luxury becomes our hope, the worst thing we can imagine is losing comfort. When commerce becomes our security, the collapse of buying and selling feels like the end of the world. But Revelation is teaching us to see deeper. The real tragedy was not that Babylon lost her wealth. The real tragedy was that Babylon used her wealth for sin. She deceived the nations. She persecuted the saints. She glorified herself. She treated human souls like cargo. She lived as though she could never fall. And God brought her down. For Christians in the first century, this would have been a powerful message. Rome looked untouchable. The pressure to participate in its systems of worship and commerce would have been strong. It would have been easy to think, you know what? This is just the way the world works. And if I want to survive, if I want to buy and sell, if I want to protect my family, if I want to avoid suffering, well then, I'm just going to have to compromise. But Revelation 18 says, do not build your life on Babylon. Do not envy Babylon. Do not fear Babylon. Do not join Babylon. Babylon falls. The kings mourn because their power is shaken. The merchants mourn because their market is gone. The shipmasters mourn because their trade has collapsed. But the people of God are called to see what the world refuses to see. Babylon was never safe. Babylon was never permanent. Babylon was never worth your soul. And that is the warning for you and I. Don't let money make your decisions for you. Don't let luxury define success for you. Don't let economic pressure determine your faithfulness. Don't let the world's prosperity deceive you into thinking the world system is secure. Because in a single hour, God can bring down what the world thought would never fall. All right, now verse 20 says, "Rejoice over her, O heaven, and you saints and apostles and prophets, for God has given judgment for you against her." What an amazing dramatic contrast here. On earth, the people who are tied to Babylon, they mourn. In heaven, the people of God are told to rejoice. Now, we need to understand that carefully. This is not heaven rejoicing in cruelty. This is not the saints delighting in pain for pain's sake. This is not a call to personal vengeance or hateful celebration. The rejoicing is because God has judged rightly. God has vindicated his people. God has answered the blood of the saints. God has shown that Babylon does not get the final word. Remember, Revelation has already shown us the sufferings of God's people. Back in the earlier visions, the souls are under the altar cried out, "Remember how long, O Lord?" They wanted to know when God would judge, when God would act, and when God would answer the persecution and bloodshed committed against his servants. Revelation 18 answers that question. God does act. God does judge. God does remember. God does not ignore the sufferings of his people. God does not allow Babylon to persecute forever. The saints may suffer for a time, The beast may rage for a time. The harlot may appear wealthy and untouchable for a time, but only for a time. Heaven says rejoice, because God has given judgment for his people against her. That means Babylon's fall is not merely a political event. It is not merely an economic event. It is not merely the collapse of an empire. It is divine justice. It is God showing that the enemies of his people are his enemies. It is God showing that he rules over the affairs of the nations. It is God showing that the blood of the saints matters to him. Then the chapter gives us one final picture. The mighty angel takes up a stone like a great millstone and throws it into the sea. And the angel says, "So will Babylon, the great city, be thrown down with violence and will be found no more." And that image is simple and powerful and final. A great millstone does not float. It's heavy. And when it's thrown into the sea, it sinks. It disappears beneath the water. And it's not easily recovered. It does not rise again on its own. The image is finality. Babylon is going down. Babylon's power is being cast away. Babylon's world dominance is ending. The empire that seemed like it could never fall will be thrown down, and in that form, in that power, in that dominance, it'll never be found again. Now, that does not require us to understand the city itself as literally vanishing from the map. Revelation, again, is using symbolic language here. The point is not that there will never be a place called Rome again. The point is that Rome, as the persecuting, world-dominating, Babylon-like power, is being brought down. Its power is broken. Its economic glory is stripped away. Its arrogance is answered. Its influence is judged. Its persecuting dominance is cast into the sea. Then comes one of the most haunting parts of this chapter. The angel says the sound of harpists and musicians, flute players and trumpeters will be heard in her no more. A craftsman of any craft will be found no more. The sound of the mill will be heard no more. The light of a lamp will shine in her no more. The voice of a bridegroom and bride will be heard in her no more. All right, 5 times that idea is repeated, no more. No more music, no more craftsmanship, no more daily labor, no more light in the house, no more wedding joy. The picture is not merely that Babylon loses a battle. The picture is desolation. Everything that made the city seem alive is gone. The normal sounds of human life are silenced. The music stops playing. The marketplace stops. The millstone stops. The lamps go dark. The wedding songs disappear. That is what judgment does to Babylon. The city that once filled the world with noise is silenced. The city that once dazzled the nations with light is darkened. The city that once celebrated luxury and pleasure now has no song, no work, no home, no wedding, no future. Why? Verse 23 tells us, "For your merchants were the great ones of the earth, and all nations were deceived by your sorcery." Babylon did not merely sin privately. Babylon deceived nations. She used her power, her wealth, her religion, her luxury, and influence to intoxicate the world. The word picture is frightening. The nations were literally under her spell. They did not see clearly. They thought Babylon was glory. They thought Babylon was security. They thought Babylon was success. They thought Babylon was life. But it was only a deception. And that's one reason why Revelation is so necessary. It pulls back the curtain. It shows us what the world really is when it stands opposed to God. It shows us that Babylon is not just impressive. She is deceptive. She makes sin look profitable. She makes compromise look necessary. She makes idolatry look normal. She makes luxury look like the highest good. She makes persecution look like strength. She makes human souls look like cargo. And the nation falls for it. So God judges her. Then the final verse of the chapter gives us the deepest reason for Babylon's judgment. And in her was found the blood of prophets and of saints and all who have been slain on the earth. That is the final evidence. Babylon is not innocent. Babylon is stained with blood. The prophets, the saints, the faithful servants of God, their blood cries out, and God answers. The empire that seemed to get away with violence does not get away with it. The power that persecuted God's people is brought into judgment. The city that thought it could silence the witnesses of God is itself silenced. And that's where Revelation 18 ends. The chapter begins with an angel crying, "Fallen, fallen is the Babylon the Great." It ends with Babylon being thrown down like a millstone into the sea. And between those two pictures, God explains why. Her sins were heaped as high as heaven. She glorified herself. She lived in luxury. She said she would never mourn. She deceived the nations. She made the merchants rich. She treated human souls as cargo. And she shed the blood of God's people. And God judged her for it. So, what do we take away from Revelation 18? First, we must see worldly power correctly. Babylon always looks impressive before she falls. She looks wealthy, she looks secure, she looks influential, she looks permanent. But Revelation teaches us to see what heaven sees. The world may admire Babylon, but heaven sees the uncleanness, the arrogance, the deception, and the blood. Second, we must come out of her. The command in Revelation 18 is still searching. Come out of her, my people. Don't share in her sins. Don't be intoxicated by her luxuries. Don't let her economy own your conscience. Don't let her politics become your worship. Don't let her power frighten you into compromise. And don't let her success convince you that she is safe. Thirdly, we must remember that God judges. God may allow nations and empires to rise for his purposes, but when their time is done, he can and will bring them down. He did it with Babylon, he did it with Persia, he did it with Greece, and he did it with Rome. The Lord God is mighty, and he rules over the nations. Fourthly, we must take comfort that God vindicates his people. The saints may suffer, the church may be pressured, faithfulness may be costly, the world may mock obedience and reward compromise. But Babylon does not win. The beast does not win. The harlot does not win. God gives judgment for his people. He remembers, and he acts, and he repays. And finally, we must be faithful. That is the message that clearly Christians needed. They were facing political power, religious pressure, economic consequences, and persecution. But Revelation says, do not bow. Do not compromise. Do not join Babylon. Don't fear Babylon. She falls. The world may cry, what city is like the great city? But heaven says she will be found no more. So be faithful. Come out from Babylon. Worship God alone. Trust the Lamb. Because the kingdoms of this world rise and fall, but the kingdom of God stands forever. Thank you for joining me in our study of Revelation chapter 18. Next time, we'll look at chapter 19, where the smoke of Babylon's fall gives way to the sound of heaven's praise. After the world mourns over the collapse of this great city, heaven rejoices because God's judgments are true and righteous. We'll see the victory of the Lamb, the marriage supper, and the King of Kings riding forth in triumph. Revelation 19 reminds us that Babylon falls, but Christ reigns, and his faithful people are called to rejoice in his victory. Thanks again. Have a great and wonderful day.
I have decided.